Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Raven's Prophecy. The Elder Trials, Chapter 21 by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 21. They were led to private chambers, each room simple but elegant. Astrid walked towards the open window and peered out. A bird's eye view of the forest, the beauty and majesty of Mirkwood, lush vegetation that grew in abundance, strange and wondrous animals and creatures that ran, flew, and swung their way beneath the city of the wild elves. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and all Astrid could think of was not her awaiting last trial, but what the lords were doing to the friendly Coda tribe. Knowing that the next trial didn't begin for another 4 hours, she decided to explore her new surroundings, but with Lord Asulf's soldiers standing guard and orders for none of the competitors to leave their rooms, Astrid knew she would have to find another way. Astrid stood near her door and weighed up her options. It was at that exact moment that she heard a thud near her window. Turning, she was surprised to see Magnus kneeling on the floor and dusting off his chest and arms. "What are you doing?" Astrid asked, alarmed, realizing that her lifelong friend had been foolishly climbing along the outside of their rooms, risking his very life to come and see her. "Why?" she thought. "I saw you looking at the packages the Thorn Trinity had loaded into the wagons, and I've been watching you ever since we arrived. You have had that angry, deep-thinking look on your face. I've known you too long. What's the problem?" Magnus asked. "You just nearly killed yourself getting here, and you did it because you didn't like my facial expression. And I have the problem?" Astrid replied. She was still both annoyed and upset at the last time Magnus had spoken to her. Magnus seemed to pick up on this. "Look, I'm not saying that I'm not still upset about what happened at the ruins, but I've known you too long not to come and see what's wrong with my best friend," Magnus said sternly. Astrid sighed. "I know that what happened at the ruins and after was far from pleasant, but it's also not my fault. I'm still having trouble dealing with what I saw and heard. But to be perfectly honest, these trials seem to be creating more and more problems," Astrid said. "Like what you saw in the bundles?" Magnus asked. "Precisely," Astrid replied. She then spent the next 20 minutes telling Magnus what she saw, and her suspicions, after which Magnus sat silent, letting the information sink in. "You know we only have a few hours," Magnus said. "So you're saying we should do nothing?" Astrid replied, nervous and unsure. "Not at all. I'm saying we're going to have to be quick." Magnus grinned, and for the first time in all the years Astrid had known Magnus, she saw something she had never seen before. Adventurous courage. The smaller teenager motioned Astrid towards the open window. She followed willingly, his confidence contagious. Magnus led the way, shimmying down the ledge below the connecting windows. Again, Astrid was impressed with the way Magnus was taking charge, and his newfound physicality. "You're actually pretty good at this," Astrid said quietly. "You sound surprised. Did you not see me climb up the cliffs of madness?" Magnus said proudly. "I did. I keep forgetting how much we have all accomplished in the past week, and as much as I'm impressed with your newfound heroism. Do you know which way we need to go?" Astrid asked. They had just arrived at the edge of a giant timber roof beam. The beam ran directly above the main marketplace. "We need to get across this beam. The packages we brought in with us were packed in that storage hut, at the far end of the marketplace," Magnus instructed. Astrid glared down at the height, which was considerable. "The good and bad aspect of the climb is that no one should see us all the way up here." "And what's the bad aspect?" Astrid asked, already guessing what he was about to say. "If we fall, it'll be over quick and easy, and we won't be alive to face the embarrassment of the Thorn Trinity," Magnus said. "Well, that's just great." Astrid sighed. "Lead on." Magnus went first. The beam that shot the length of the marketplace was quite large. Intersecting crossbeams lay horizontally, then out on an angle that bore the brunt of the burden. These beams holding large shingles fashioned from tree bark and sealed with tree sap. Astrid and Magnus were able to walk across the top, being careful to step slowly and maintain their balance. The trickiest part of the journey was the intersecting beams, where they had to squeeze themselves between them, and the roof thatching, Magnus leading the way and pulling the blacksmith's daughter behind. This was taking way too long, Magnus's words about time, now lingering in her ears. Every so often Astrid would glance down and think what an amazing piece of engineering this small species had managed to accomplish. She was also reminded that if they fell, or worse, they were caught, the ramifications might be a lot worse. Astrid! Astrid! Magnus's voice hissed over and over, eventually waking Astrid from her daydream. She shook her head and cleared her vision. "I'm sorry. I guess I kind of zoned out," Astrid said. "Well, now's not the time to be doing that. We need to remain focused, because we have arrived," Magnus instructed. They had managed to cross the beam, but in doing so had lost an hour of precious time. Magnus now made his way towards one of the massive posts that led to the base of the village. Like every other structure, it was interwoven within the tree's network of branches, trunk, and roots that twisted and circled the posts. Other vines and plant life also joined the symbiotic relationship between tree and structure, green shoots, and a cavalcade of aromatic flowers finishing the gorgeous view. "Grab onto the vines. They're quite strong. They're also our only way down," Magnus said, and without waiting for an objection, he started his climb down. Again, Astrid let out a loud sigh, then scrambled to follow. The lush flow of vines and flowers acted as natural camouflage, as the two teenagers descended down the post directly towards the hut that held the packages. Unlike the slow progress they had made earlier, they were now climbing with greater speed, sacrificing stealth and safety. "We're making great time," Magnus called out, his confidence soaring. Grasping a heavy vine, he prepared to lower himself down a twisted section of post. But at the last moment, the vine twitched under his grip. With dawning horror, he pulled out what he had assumed was natural vegetation, only to find the pulsating purple body of a giant caterpillar, its dimensions more akin to a giant viper. Stifling a scream, Magnus jerked back in revulsion, and in doing so lost his grip on anything in the way that might have prevented him from falling, which he did. Several feet Magnus toppled backwards until his right foot snagged a gnarled imperfection in the tree's trunk, and his fall was halted by the sudden jerk. He muffled a cry of pain as his ankle was wrenched by the sudden shift in inertia. "Magnus!" Astrid called out, careful not to alert any of the wild elves, who were going about their day unaware of what was transpiring above them. The blacksmith's daughter scrambled down to his side. She carefully touched his shoulder, and he groaned. "Are you all right?" Astrid said softly. I think I'm okay," Magnus replied, although Astrid didn't think he was sure at all. "I'm going to try and lift you a little, but you're going to have to help me. I can't do this all by myself." "Do you think you can help?" Astrid replied. "I'm not sure, although what choice do I have?" Magnus chuckled, then winced as he attempted to move. "I don't know. Maybe this isn't such a good idea," Astrid said. "I'll be fine. We just have to do this quick," Magnus said. "Of course," Astrid agreed. She moved quickly into position, on his left side, then wrapping a thin vine around one arm, she used her other arm to support her friend. "On 3, 2, 1. Astrid counted down, and with a mighty surge of strength, Magnus was able to twist and lift himself, just enough so that his foot found enough space to pull itself free. Also, grasping a handful of vine, Magnus was then able to swing in close to Astrid, the effort causing him to screw up his face in pain. "How is it?" Astrid asked. Magnus tested his weight on the twisted ankle, and winced a little. Then after a second he smiled a little. "It's sore." "But not as bad as I thought it would be," Magnus replied. "Good enough to continue down?" Astrid asked. "Yes, but not enough to climb back up," he said ruefully. Astrid nodded knowingly. "Then we'll have to find another way back," Astrid said, trying to ease his worry, clearly evident by the heavy lines of concentration around his eyes. Apart from Magnus's twisted ankle, the gods had been watching them, and they had smiled. Astrid thought, and that was the only reason they had made it this far without being spotted. Either way, Astrid was beginning to feel anxious. "I know you're not going to want to hear this, but we're going to have to speed this up," Astrid suggested. Magnus nodded. They were now situated directly above the roof of the storage hut. Magnus pointed. There's an open vent. We'll go in through it, find out what the Thorn Trinity are up to, and get out, Magnus suggested. Let's not waste any more time talking, Astrid said, and leapt the short distance from the post to the roof. She landed like a cat, her soft deerskin boots making nearly no noise. Rolling to one side, she laid low and listened. Satisfied, she signaled for Magnus to follow. He jumped next to her, his landing not nearly as pretty, but he made as little noise as Astrid, who was quick to help him up. Again he winced from the pain, but he gritted his teeth as they entered in through the darkened vent, situated on the roof. Astrid attempted to feel her way around in the dark, but between the two of them, they were unintentionally starting to make way too much noise. This is going to take forever. I'd kill for a torch. Anything to help us see in here, Magnus complained. Astrid's eyes went wide. Of course. She hissed, and an idea formulating. What? What is it? Shh, Astrid insisted. She had taken a knee and was going through one of the many secret pockets her mother had sewn into her new jacket. Don't keep me in suspense, Magnus urged. Astrid ignored him, allowing her sense of touch to hopefully find what she suspected was sitting within her grasp. There, Astrid whispered, her fingers wrapping around an object that was about 2 inches long and half an inch wide. Carefully sliding it free from the confines of her inner coat, the moment it hit the open air, the object flared into brilliant purple light, illuminating the interior of the hut with perfect clarity. It was so bright that both Astrid and Magnus had to shield their eyes a little from its brilliance. Where did you get a hold of an attar stone? Magnus said and impressed. Mother and father, but where they sourced it from, I know not. Astrid shrugged. The hut was filled with all manner of items, some she knew, basic tools, others, not so familiar. She assumed the life of a wild elf probably differed a great deal to that of a human. They had split up, hoping that they could cover more ground separately. 10 minutes later, it proved fruitful. Astrid, over here, he called out. Arriving at his side, she too saw the stacked pile of packages that they had brought with them, at least a dozen in total. Magnus was quick to grab one, and with his dagger he sliced open one side and removed the contents. Astrid crinkled her nose when she saw what looked like dried compost. Grasping a handful of the brown-looking leaves, Astrid sniffed, then jerked her face away from the pungent aroma. What is it? Magnus looked alarmed. It's Kavlok, Astrid replied, confused. Kavlok? Are you sure? Magnus asked. Of course I'm sure. There's nothing quite like that sickly, sweet smell, Astrid said. What would they want with 12 bags of poison? Magnus asked. I don't know, Astrid replied. You don't know what? A voice from behind asked. Both Astrid and Magnus nearly jumped out of their skin when they heard the deep-toned voice, Astrid dropping the bag in the progress, the contents spilling across the floor. Before them stood Enoch, and flanking him, 2 warriors holding bows, with arrows notched. The 2 teens held up their hands in a gesture of surrender. I asked you both a question, Enoch asked again. His face was a stony mask, hard to read, however his eyes were hard, like flint. We, Magnus stammered. You two had better give me some answers and quick, Enoch instructed, and glanced at his 2 warriors, in particular their loaded weapons. We mean no harm, Astrid said and took a step forward. The 2 archers tensed, but Enoch steadied them with a wave of his hand. Keep talking, Enoch urged. Astrid took a deep breath. The metal ore you gave to the Thorn Trinity. Do you know what it is? Astrid asked. Not really, but it's useless to make weapons with. And with have lots of it in the grounds around us, Enoch replied. The 2 teenagers were stunned by this. What about this? Astrid pointed to the bundle she had dropped on the ground only seconds earlier, the dried leaves scattered around her. Do you know what this is? Enoch nodded. We call it hitai. To my people, it's a powerful painkiller, and something that it's very hard to come by, Enoch said. Well, to the people of Greytree, it's known as Kavlok, a dangerous poison that we use on rats and other pests, and it grows like weeds in the hills behind our village. The flowers may look pretty, but it's rather vile stuff. And as for the shiny metal ore you gave us, we call it gold and silver, and we consider it amongst the most valuable of metal in the world, Astrid said. Enoch stopped to consider this news. I'm sorry to tell you, but I believe the Trinity are taking terrible advantage of you and your people, Astrid added. I swear we only just learnt about this, Magnus added. Enoch studied the two teenagers before with hard, calculating eyes. I still don't understand why you are here. Enoch indicated the interior of the hut. I know this sounds far-fetched, but neither of us like the idea of our people taking advantage of yours. It's wrong, Astrid said, and blushed under Enoch's raw appraisal of them. We're sorry to have caused so much trouble, Magnus added. He was growing nervous to what outcome lay ahead. Ever so slowly, a smile spread over the wild elf's face. Then, quite unexpectedly, he spoke in a tongue both alien and beautiful to the teenager's ears. It was the language of the elves. His two flanking archers lowered their bows. We are aware of the worth of gold and silver. However, in our community, it is useless. The Hitai, or as you call it Kavlok, is crucial for healing many of our people. In our eyes, it is us that is taking advantage of you, Enoch replied. What are you going to do with us? Astrid asked. Enoch thought this question over. Two teenagers that thought that breaking into our private storage facility to expose what they thought was their own people's treachery. I'm going to take you back to your rooms, Enoch said. What about the Thorn Trinity? Magnus asked. I don't think they need to know what has happened here today, Enoch said with a grin. Using his position as the Queen's war chief, Enoch slipped the two teenagers back up to their rooms without a single person or elf noticing. Astrid was the last to be placed, and before her door was shut, Enoch took a moment to talk to the blacksmith's daughter, alone. I don't plan on saying anything to my queen about this, and I suggest you do the same, Enoch warned. But shouldn't I tell someone about this? Astrid queried. Sometimes we have to do things. For the people that we care about, that is. Complicated. We are now fully aware of the deceptions that the Thorn Trinity are capable of. However, the real question is why. Sometimes a leader or leaders must do things not for themselves, but the greater good, Enoch said. I don't understand, Astrid replied. You have a brave and kind heart, young one. But for your own sake, I suggest that you and your friend keep this a secret. But also know this, I am very loyal to my friends, Enoch said. Astrid still wasn't completely clear on what exactly was transpiring. However, she was smart enough to realize when someone was helping her. Thank you, Astrid replied. You're welcome, Enoch said with a smile. He was about to leave, but paused. How did you know about the metal ore? What we gave to your people was raw, and not that easily identified? My father is the village blacksmith. He has always been a great teacher to me, Astrid replied with a smile of her own. Knowledge that is passed down is more valuable than any jewel, Enoch said, then departed. Astrid pondered these words as she awaited the beginning of the last trial. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Raven's prophecy, The Elder Trials, has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.